Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the View from the Clipper podcast. My name is James, and I'm joined by Josh Sexton. How you doing, Josh?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Good. I'm excited to talk some Clippers basketball. It feels like a little while since I've talked about the Clippers to anyone. I'm feeling that itch coming back of the schedule being released the other day and things like that. So definitely ready to talk some hoops again, and good to see you again as well, James.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, I think it's just NBA. The off season is just such a long time, but it feels like the more news that's coming through, the closer that we're getting to it. And we're only around 2 months out. So there have been some news since we last spoke. And last time we touched on Clippers re-signing Harden, bringing in Nico Batum, Derek Jones Jr., Chris Dunn, Mo Bamba, Kevin Porter Jr. But we've also had the NBA draft since then. So it'd be good to start off, touch on who the Clippers drafted at number 46. Clippers went with Cam Christie. He's 19 years old, shooting guard, signed a 4-year deal. So the Clippers have got a bit of confidence in him. Brother of Max Christie. Josh, what are your thoughts on Cam for the Clippers?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it comes in the summer where Brandon Boston Jr., of course, has left the Clippers. He's gone to the Spurs in the hopes of sort of getting a bit more game time there. And uh, Cam Christie sort of feels to me like one of those pickups that is sort of Brandon Boston Jr. Like it's that sort of draftee because once again it's that like one of the younger guys in the draft. That's one of the guys that's got a lot of upside. It's a guy that seems like he's got scoring chops as well and things like that. Seems like a good personality to have around the place, which I think like is a thing that should never go amiss. So I'm excited by the idea of Cam. I didn't watch a ton of summer league, but from the bits I saw in summer league and stuff, I think there's a lot to be impressed with there. His shot looks really nice, and I think if you can get a guy coming out the draft who can sort of shoot as well as he can, whose form looks as sort of clean and crisp as his does, then I think the Clippers have a lot to be confident of going into the season with Cam. And listen, he's not going to be a guy who is a big part of the rotation this season. I don't think any of us will be expecting that from the 46th pick. But as I say, if it's a guy who you can sort of draft low on, getting on one of those sort of smaller rookie deals at the back end of the second round of the draft, then and he's got a lot of potential upside as I say, then he can potentially be a big feature for the Clippers in future. But yeah, it was really giving me all the hallmarks this draft night for the Clippers. Obviously, they go and pick up Trenton Flowers as well. And all the talk of him in the aftermath was about him having the biggest vertical leap in the combine and stuff, and it was really giving me those Keon Johnson, Brandon Boston Jr. draft night vibes, which is probably the last draft that I got really excited about for the Clippers, just because it was only 3 second round guys with Jason Preston in there as well, but felt like you had the playmaker in Jason Preston, the guy with the hops in Keon Johnson, and then the guy who I just thought was going to be an absolute bucket in Brandon Boston Jr. So obviously all the best to BJ, but hopefully Cam Christie can be the better version of that draft pick.
Yeah, I think we can hope so. I wouldn't say I'm someone who knows every single draft prospect. So I was picking Cam Christie wasn't something I was clued up on going into the draft, but the consensus was that he was a really good young prospect. I think a lot of people were surprised that he ended up at pick 46. So I was glad that the Clippers took a swing on him, and I think the reporters on the ground that day could hear cheering from the Clippers draft for him. So you know that they really wanted him. Something that I have had been doing over the summer was trying to collate all of the draft prospects that were working out with the Clippers, and he wasn't one that was noted. It was mostly older guys who I think, thinking about now, most of them went either undrafted or late in the second round. So, that's information that doesn't typically get out, but it seemed like it was someone that the Clippers were really high on. Obviously, Max Christie's only playing across the corridor whilst they're in crypto. So he's someone they've known well, and I think it's a better strategy for them over the past few years that they've gone with maybe some of the more older picks and in the late second round have maybe gone for a younger prospect, but to take Cam Christie at 19, who's I think showed flashes in college of being a high volume 3-point shooter and who has those transferable skills, maybe still more of a development project, but I think it's something that the Clippers can, really hold on to with the development coaches that they have there in Sean Fean and others. I think he's a prospect to be really excited about. And yeah, I've got some of his stats here. He started 26 out of 33 games in college last year, played 30 minutes, averaged about 11 points, 3.6 rebounds, 2.2 assists, and 5.4 threes per game. Like that's a really high volume for college, and making them at a rate of 39.1%. It's hopefully something that can really translate to the next level. And I think it's something that we definitely saw in summer league. And I know you touched on a bit there, but Cam, I think, shot around 7.4 threes per game in summer league at around 40.5%. So it's something that's part of his game. I think it's something that's definitely something that he can scale up. There's more development, absolutely, and we think we saw that in summer league, particularly on the defensive end. He can grow into his body a bit more. He can build out that physicality, but that's only going to come with that experience. So I'm hoping that he can spend a bit of time with the G League. There might be a few opportunities for him now that the Clippers squad has some spots for players like Cam, and it's just going to come with experience and giving him that time. And you touched on Brandon Boston Jr. there. I just think he wasn't afforded maybe a lot of those opportunities, particularly when he looked like he might be coming to his own. I think there was a game against the Celtics where he had a great game, and it's just about Ty Lue and the coaches really putting their trust into these players and trying to find them opportunities. And I hope that will come for Cam. But look, it's not a rush for him. He's a talent, and I'm just glad that the Clippers managed to acquire him.
Yeah, 100%. And like you say, that it felt like one of those ones where the Clippers backroom staff, and I really like those quotes from the journalists that you mentioned from the war room as they called it on draft night, where obviously Al Frank and a couple of the guys who were sort of rounding up the draft picks that night. It does feel like they were genuinely surprised that Cam Christie went this low down in the draft. I think it's all the reports in the aftermath at least suggested that this was why he wasn't working out with the Clippers and stuff beforehand. Was they weren't expecting him to drop as far as 46. So it feels like one of the ones where for fans of 2K out there, you draft a guy on 2K and the thing comes up saying like, oh, they can't believe this guy went so low down in the draft. It does feel like one of those pickups for the Clippers. And you've mentioned the summer league stat lines and things there as well. Like he shoots 40% from three in summer league. His field goal percentage leaves a little bit to be desired at 37.3, but 40.5 from 3-point range. I don't have the attempts for that. I could maybe look a little bit deeper into that, but it does feel like you say, he is a a really terrific shooter. He's a player who can shoot at sort of higher volumes as well, and has no issue sort of being able to scale that up. So it feels like one of those ones that could be a really interesting project for the Clippers down the years. And we keep making the comparison with Brandon Boston Jr. I think there was clearly something within Brandon Boston Jr.'s game that particularly for a coach like Ty Lue, he just didn't feel like he could continue to develop on and build on. And I think one of the things I always want to see from Brandon Boston Jr.'s adaptation, and I think it would be maybe slightly less of an issue with Cam, although I think like he's coming in looking slight, and that's where the Brandon Boston Jr. comparison sort of does stick in your mind. Was that it felt like over 3 years with the Clippers, I think it was 3 years in the end with the Clippers, 3 seasons, I should say. Brandon Boston Jr. should have been able to bulk up and look a little bit more like a guy who was physically ready for the NBA. He never quite got to that physicality level for me. That's one area where like Cam coming into his first season, I'm sure he'll be able to get a couple of touches and a couple of those minutes on the court and get a bit of a flavor of what it's like to play at NBA level, and then hopefully he can make that sort of sophomore leap, and particularly that leap in terms of physicality, because that's generally I think the way it goes is that there'll be guys who do bulk up over their first summer going into the NBA, but most of those transformations physically come in the sort of second summers and things like before season starts. So yeah, I'm really excited by this pickup, and as I say, the sort of almost the sleeper one within that is the Trenton Flowers going undrafted and getting him as a pickup in there as well. And he's a pretty unknown entity to a lot of us Clippers fans, but I'd be really interested to see what he can bring to the organization in that sort of bottom of the bench unit as well whenever there is garbage time minutes. And of course we hope the garbage time comes aplenty with Clippers blowouts. So it'd be really exciting to see what both these guys can bring to the organization.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely time for Cam to develop, obviously being 19, but luckily, I think he's coming into the time where the Clippers franchise desperately need more outside shooting. Losing Paul George, I don't think that's something they've necessarily replaced much in the new guys that they've signed. They're definitely going for this more defensive attitude, and I'm hoping that he can learn that aspect from veterans like Nico Batum, Chris Dunn, who just brought in, who's the sort of top of the defensive class, really, in terms of a player giving their all and using their physicality to really impact the game. So I'm hoping he can learn a lot of that side from them. But he's also got guys like James Harden there, Norman Powell, who are excellent outside shooters and playmakers. So I'm hoping that there may be some opportunities for him, given the high volume of threes that he does put up a game, and that sort of physicality and defensive instinct will just come from experience. And we saw in Jordan Miller last year, who we'll touch on in a moment, but he was one that really shined in the G League last year. And it does feel like the Clippers have got a really good setup over there. I think that they've just renamed it to San Diego Clippers. So obviously they're opening the arena, so they've got all the facilities for them to have a really successful season. And they did look great last year. They gave Jordan Miller an excellent opportunity to really develop there. He didn't get much NBA minutes, but coming into Summer League this year, you could see that those developmental minutes have allowed him to, in some cases, push himself potentially ahead of Kobe Brown, who was maybe the prospect that people were a lot more excited about last year. So let's see if he can follow in his path. But yeah, just touching on Jordan Miller there, and I don't think a lot of people were too excited about Jordan Miller this time last year, but he was absolutely incredible in the G League, and coming to the Summer League, he put up an absolute monster stat line: 25 points per game on 54% from field goal range, 60% from three, 80% from the free throw line. Just absolutely dominant. I think robbed in some cases of the MVP. And I'm not sure who's made that decision, but it went to someone who wasn't even in the Summer League first team. So yeah, he's looked absolutely fantastic and is really knocking at the door for an opportunity, hopefully with the Clippers, but you'd think elsewhere otherwise. What have you made of his performances over the summer?
Yeah, it was really interesting because, as I say, I generally don't sort of engage too much with Summer League, but I felt compelled to watch the semi-final that the Clippers were in, because it's pretty rare that a Clippers team gets that far in Summer League. To be honest, the Clippers have obviously, religiously been a sort of older franchise, a lot of guys who are, towards the back end of their careers and probably don't spend too much time sort of, looking at youth or investing in youth too much. And that's been shown by the fact that, I mean, for one, they gave up a lot of their picks in that Paul George trade, which is now obviously infamous because everyone's saying that's a big L that the Clippers took. It's meant that we basically had to rely on a lot of second round picks in recent years and things. But with an owner like Steve Ballmer, you never really have to worry too much about those sort of younger guys, because you think the top end of the roster will always just be able to recycle itself. But then, it's hard not to get excited when you do see, younger guys coming through. And I think that's one of the things, as sports fans, we all sort of love to see is that development from, draft picks into superstars and in the league. It's all those sort of stories and personal stories that you can, really get behind. And Jordan Miller's personal story is an interesting one, to be honest. And that was why, coming into the Summer League, I was fascinated that he sort of, made the leap that he did, because you mentioned how good he was in the G League, but the Summer League is really, the showcase where all the rookies are there, a lot of the sophomore guys are there. I mean, I couldn't believe that for a start, Jaime Jaquez Jr. was one of the guys that was featuring in Summer League this year, because he proved himself to be such a good NBA player last season, but he was still kicking around there, so that the competition is that much of a step up, I think, from the G League as well. And it's obviously a different time of year and there's different sorts of things going on, but I think in general it does always feel like more of a spectacle. So when the lights shine brighter is when the biggest and best players step up. And you mentioned Jordan Miller. I'm not sure how he's not managed to get MVP at Summer League there, because I think he was the best player at Summer League. The stat line which you've mentioned goes to prove it. And that's 54.9 field goal percentage. And that's field 14.2, I should say, field goals attempted per game as well. So it's he's doing that on absolutely massive volume and still being able to put those numbers for the Clippers. I think it's hard not to be excited about him as an NBA prospect. And as you say, it's going to be interesting to see how his contract situation in particular unfolds, because there's a lot of people sort of already lobbying for him to get a regular contract. I don't think that would be too much of a smart move at this stage for the Clippers. I agree with a couple of the prominent voices in the Clipper space who've said that it's actually wiser really to keep him on one of the 3 two-way contracts that the Clippers are allowed to have, sort of, use those games up, that there's like an allowance of games they can have on two-way contracts, use those up in the first half of the season, get that bit of a flavor of him, and then listen, if you can convert him into a sort of regular roster spot come the sort of time when the cut off for that sort of thing is, then he'll have proved himself hopefully by that point. So yeah, really excited by what we saw from Jordan Miller over summer league. Really excited to see if there are more minutes for him to come in the regular season. I should just say as well, because I mentioned about Cam Christie's 3-point shooting before. He was on 7.4 attempts per game in summer league, so 40.5% on 7.4 attempts per game. Jordan Miller was only putting up 4 threes a game, so Cam was the sort of higher volume outside shooter. Jordan was more of a guy who was able to get his game going on the inside. But I mean, you referenced it before, still on 4 3-point attempts a game. He was shooting 60%, so it feels like the Clippers have got a couple of killer guys on offense there. We can look forward to seeing more of in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, Jordan seems like more of the well-rounded package, and I think you would expect that from how old is he? 23 now. So, he's far the senior of Cam Christie, but it looks like he's really developed his all-round game. I think what the Clippers would be most excited about is that a lot of that scoring he was doing in summer league was off ball. He didn't look too dominant, and that would really excite the Clippers because it means he can sort of make that transition a lot more seamlessly to go from being that off-ball player in a summer league. He's not going to get many touches on the Clippers, particularly with James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. So he really needs to almost just be ready to go when the time is right for him. And I think it really demonstrated itself on the defensive end. Albeit it's the summer league, it's still a competitive level. And I think that's something that Clippers would be really excited about, because not only has he got all these offensive qualities, scoring inside, I think he's got a really nice flow game, can score outside. But that defensive angle is going to be the thing that the Clippers are going to be really interested in next year, that intensity. Because if you look at some of the free agents they've brought in, they're all in that defensive mind, maybe have not got some of the offensive skills as guys like James Harden and Kawhi have, but the role players they've got in are signaling there's a defensive attitude coming to the Clippers. So him focusing on that part of his game is really exciting. And yeah, I'm remembering an interview he did with Law Murray from The Athletic, and he sort of asked what his objectives were, and he just sort of said, sort of contracts. I want to get a contract. I want to get a contract. So, a lot of sport, a lot of NBA basketball is momentum. So I'm really hoping he does get that opportunity. It does seem like if he is to stay with the Clippers, it will be on that two-way. And I think if we are finding he's not getting the minutes, I would hope that he would get a spot somewhere else, because he's absolutely worked his butt off to get it. So wishing him the best for the new season, and I think it could be a really interesting option for the Clippers, because I don't think they really have a guy like him who can score in a various amount of ways and defend the ball and be physical. I think it could be a really cool option for the Clippers this season, and I'm very excited to see how his development moves forward.
Yeah, he feels like one of those guys you can bring off the bench and sort of give you that instant energy. And there's another one of those guys we'll come on to talk about whose Clippers future is probably a little bit up in the air in Bones Hyland. But I don't think it harms you to have these kinds of guys around who can come in and just get buckets, and particularly when they are sort of bottom of the bench guys. And that's not to do down Jordan Miller in any way, really. You mentioned he's 24 years old. He could be going out and getting a legit NBA contract and legit NBA minutes to my mind. But if he wants to stay on a team who, listen, the Clippers are going to be outside of contention this year in terms of what we all expect. But if he wants to be on a team who are going to, compete night in, night out and be competitive in that sense, even if they're not sort of competitive in championship conversations. And I still think the Clippers may surprise a few people in that sense, as much as I'm obviously, coming at it from a biased standpoint. But Jordan Miller can definitely make himself a part of that roster in a way that there's other guys who've probably come in with similar profiles in the past who've not been able to. You've referenced already that there's a lot of prototypes for the Clippers there in terms of guys who picked up in the off season who are, more defensive guys, less of the sort of offensive side of the ball. And I don't want to sort of, do down Jordan Miller's defensive side of the ball, because I think, as you sort of right to point out, that there is some chops on the defensive side of the ball as well. But I think it's the offense as much as anything the Clippers will be really interested in there, and especially that, as I say, that fit alongside Cam Christie, because Cam is a guy the Clippers have huge hopes for in the future. So if Jordan can find a way to fit alongside Cam to make the most of it, of his minutes, and be a straight up bucket getter, then I think there is a future for him on the Clippers, and I'm excited to see how that unfolds over the course of the season.
No, absolutely. And I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but someone who I think he's maybe stepped in ahead in the pecking order is perhaps Kobe Brown. I mean, I didn't see much of him in summer league. I don't think he was one of the standout guys. He got some reps for the Clippers last year, obviously much more than Jordan Miller. And it's in a position that the Clippers are desperate for. He's powerful, he's physical. I just don't think he's shown that much development on the defensive end. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. He was a pick that interested me because, as I said, position that was in demand for the Clippers. He can shoot the three, or at least he demonstrated that he could shoot the three ball in college. But in summer league, I've got his stats here: 5 of 22 from three. So it's not as exciting from the outside like Cam Christie, Jordan Miller. So be very interested to see what happens with Kobe Brown this season. Just because I was quite high on him this time last year. I thought with PJ Tucker coming in and out of the team, he could have done with some of those development minutes. And with PJ Tucker still around, it would be interested to see how much of those minutes he'll get this year, given I don't think he's taken a significant jump, or at least, he didn't look like that. He didn't look like a first round pick that the Clippers picked last year in Summer League. It looked like Jordan Miller was the first round pick. So interested to hear your thoughts on Kobe and where you think he goes this season.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one with Kobe, because I think it's what's tough about basically drafting a guy who is older, coming out of college, and is filling a position of need as the power forward was for the Clippers last season. It was naturally going to make calls for him to be a part of the rotation more sort of prevalent, and fans wanting to see more of him than we got to see last season. But I think there's always been this little bit of a thing of Kobe where I'm just not sure how well the fit works with the Clippers. You've mentioned that the 3-point shooting stats there, 22.7% from 3-point over the course of summer league. It's not numbers that leap off the page. I don't think he is going to be one of those guys who can sit in the corner and get his own there. Even his free throw shooting from summer league was below 80%, and I think if you're bringing these guys through, I say younger guys. He's obviously one of the sort of older younger guys that you can get around the league, but you want them to be coming in and sort of having those fundamentals down. And I don't know, to be honest, now at the age of 24, he's obviously 23 when we drafted him. I don't know if they're the sorts of things that are going to continue to develop in his game, because he is one of those older draft picks, and it's where the Clippers have hamstrung themselves a couple of times in the past with pickups like Daniel Oturu and Mfiondu Kabengele and players like that, where they've sort of got these undersized big guys, guys who prefer to play at the four, guys who are meant to sort of have a little bit more of an outside game because of their height and things like that, and their stature. And it feels like the Clippers may have just got a bit of a miss on this once again, and it feels remotely harsh to say, because he does average 16.6 points per game throughout summer league. So it's not like he had like a terrible summer league by any stretch of the imagination. But as I say, when he's a guy who's drafted at the age of 23 years old into a position of need for the Clippers, and an area of the roster which I would still argue is a position of need, because the Clippers haven't gone out and recruited the sort of first choice power forward. They've gone and got Derrick Jones Jr., which I think probably consigns Kawhi Leonard to another season at the four. But Nico Batum being the backup four option. Then you mentioned PJ Tucker, who it does look like will stick around this season as well, or at least for until the trade deadline. And then maybe the Clippers can find a way to flip him there. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what Kobe's role is on the roster season, or if he indeed makes it that far, because he feels like one of the ones who could maybe be used as sort of make weight in any potential trades that are coming up. Although the closer we get to the season, the sort of less likely that that will continue to look. But yeah, I'm not sure the Clippers are going to hit on the draft pick of Kobe Brown. I was always skeptical from the start because as I say, that sort of age profile and the fact that it was a position of need for the Clippers and drafted at the bottom end of the first round. So not going to write him off completely because I never like to do that with anybody. And I think that one of the beautiful things about the NBA is that, you know, so many of these guys who get written off and manage to find homes in other places or manage to just find a rhythm at any point and get their opportunity and take it with both hands, because that's what it's like at the top level of basketball ultimately. And I think basketball can really swing on a pendulum like that, and that's why we love the game so much. But yeah, for Kobe, I would struggle to see how he makes his way into sort of more regular rotation this season. And at the age of 24, I'm doubtful that will come with the Clippers.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many minutes he managed to get at the Intuit Dome this season. And I think someone who might not actually get any minutes because he's left the team is Moussa Diabate, and obviously that sort of relates back to what you're saying about guys like Daniel Turu.
Yeah.
That's like Clippers have been trying to identify a prospect who can play either 4 or 5 for quite some time, and it's just a position that they've just not managed to hit on, and I think all the guys that they have looked at just haven't managed to get it on the defensive end. And I think there was a particular stat I picked up on in some of the league was that he averaged around 4 fouls a game, which is not encouraging for the NBA level at all. So more development work for Kobe. I wouldn't, as you said, wouldn't be someone I write off completely. Just interested to see what happens with him this year. It looks like he could be spending a fair amount of time in San Diego in the new arena that they're opening over there. But in terms of new arenas opening, Intuit Dome has finally opened. We had the grand opening. Was it just last week? That
Yeah.
was with Bruno Mars opening. Really excited that the doors have finally opened. I can think back to when plans were unveiled, when they broke ground on the arena. They started to do the really early tours. I think there were, some people were selling rocks from the site for some time. Things like that were going on. So it's really exciting to see that the Intuit Dome has finally opened. It looks amazing from all the tours and all the footage I've seen from those that cover the team. I'm hearing that you might be going out to LA this year. You might be getting to go, and I'm quite jealous. How excited are you to getting into Intuit Dome?
Yeah, it just does feel like a long time coming, doesn't it? You've mentioned there. I really enjoyed the tweet that Brian Seaman put the other day, where in the practice facility they've had a countdown from basically the moment that, as you say, you know, they broke ground on Intuit Dome, and the fact that it's finally here now just feels surreal. To be honest, it feels surreal to say that the Clippers no longer share an arena with the Lakers, that the Clippers have their own home, that their own home is in Inglewood. There's so many positives I think about it. And obviously we hope there'll be a couple more positives on the scheduling side of things, which we'll maybe get into. But in terms of the arena itself and the feature and things like that, it just looks so impressive, doesn't it? I've absolutely been loving all of these sort of viral TikToks that are going around of, like, you know, going around into a dome and showing all the facilities off. It looks like it's going to be, you know, genuinely one of the best fan experiences, not only in the NBA but in sports as a whole. I think that's the, you know, the amount of effort and time that Steve Ballmer has put into it. He's drawn up the sort of perfect vision, and I love the way that he's, you know, mapped out the whole thing from, you know, the single tier stand, the wall, and the way they're going to, you know, manage the ticketing around that to make sure that it's Clippers only fans, and you know, even the price of tickets and things like that. Like I know some of the prices we've seen so far have been probably a little bit over what most Clippers fans would have been expecting, but I still think that you're gonna get a more raucous atmosphere from that side of the Clippers arena, and I'm really excited to go and get to see that in person. As you say, I'm heading out there in mid-November. I'm managing to take in 4 home games in a week, which is like the one area of the Clippers schedule where they have the most home games in a row. So I feel very, very fortunate to be able to go out there again and to get to experience Intuit Dome firsthand, because, you know, as I say, there's so much to like about the look of it. There's so much to like about the experience that Steve Ballmer's been trying to draft up, even from, you know, listen, it's been a thing that Lakers fans, I've seen a lot of Lakers fans trolling Clippers fans about the amount of toilets and things like that. Steve Bone was ultimately trying to give us the best possible experience. I'm sick of queuing for toilets at football stadiums and things like that. I feel like I spend
Absolutely.
waste hours of my life queuing for toilets at sporting events. So the fact that we probably aren't going to have to do that anymore, I'm sure it'll be Clippers fans having the last laugh around that, as much as I think there's been some quite funny toilet memes so far, to be fair. So yeah, I'm really excited to go and experience that firsthand, to go and stand around the pickup court and see who's getting involved in that. Go and see all these brilliant features, the high school jerseys hung up around Intuit Dome. There's I feel like every sort of corner you turn, there's a new feature you can like about Intuit Dome. So yes, so excited to get out there, experience that firsthand, and to be honest, like even before that, so excited to see the Clippers play there for the first time. I think that first curtain raiser is going to bring some atmosphere, and I think the Clippers fans will prove a lot of people wrong this season. Like, we're going into this with no huge expectations about competing for a championship or whatever. It's probably the lowest expectations have been, probably since the 2-1-3 era started, in terms of where the Clippers will end up this season. So I think you'll see fans having a lot more fun, with this team, and particularly the way it's sort of, set up defensively. I think Intuit Dome will become, to sort of coin a football cliche, it'll become a difficult place to go. So yeah, I'm very
Yeah.
excited to see how that does develop over time, and how much it can benefit the Clippers, even if, as I say, it's not quite benefited them in the way we'd hoped with the schedule so far.
Yeah, I think you've got to hope with the changes that have been made this season, and like you said, the expectation getting a lot lower, that they can use Intuit Dome as almost a vessel for part of their success. Whereas maybe previously in crypto, they haven't had that as an advantage. That maybe teams like, I'm thinking the Jazz, who've got quite a raucous arena, Denver, who've got the arena that's quite high above sea level, that all players always talk about. Madison Square Garden, these atmospheres contribute, and it doesn't matter what sport it is. Every player will agree that having that on your side will push you forward in a game, even if perhaps on talent, you may be at a deficit. So I'm really curious to see what 17,000 people in Intuit Dome for opening night looks like, what it sounds like, because I think it's going to be something special, and I don't think there's a fan base in sports that deserve it more. And I think it's quite rare for there to be a franchise like the Clippers who've had to share such an iconic arena with the Lakers for such an amount of time, and the fan base to have to endure that, and now to have their own and have all these exciting features that you've gone through is just amazing. And yeah, I'm quite jealous of getting out there for a week. I actually think 4 games in a week, you might not even be able to see everything. You're going to need to go again, because there's so much stuff that Steve has built for the fans. Something that I'm particularly excited about is the Halo screen. I'm
Yeah.
watching them demo that to the journalists a few weeks back. Was yeah, it's revolutionizing NBA, sport in general. What they've managed to do there, it's just, yeah. I was watching it, and it looked like something out of a video game. The way that they've got the players like coming on the screen and showing some of their stats. The in detail insights that it's going to provide the fans. I think I think Steve has mentioned that they have thought of more of like the basketball geeks when they're thinking about what they're presenting on the Halo screen. So yeah, it's going to absolutely revolutionize the basketball experience. And it might not become the Mecca, but it will become close to. It might become the Mecca 2.0, because it's going to be outstanding. And that one tier stand again is not something that NBA fans would have seen before, but us, being English, watching football, will know a lot about. And it's a special way to watch a sport sort of being in a stand with lots of people who all want to cheer the team on. And I think the way they've set it up, with it being more student friendly, and inviting more of the loud fans, and rewarding some of the loud fans with features they've got in the stadium, is only going to create a better atmosphere. I think just the fact that it's been built for basketball, I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to the first game on October 23rd.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you referenced there, our sort of football love as well. And of course, we support teams in Liverpool for myself, and Tottenham for you, who already have these single tier stands and see the atmosphere that they can create. And I'm really excited because that's been a feature of, if not playoff games, then regular season games for the Clippers, where teams, for sort of local teams, especially like the Lakers and things that, have turned up, and it's probably felt more like a Lakers home game than it has a Clippers home game in the past. And that's where I think a lot of these sort of aspersions about Clippers fans have come from down the years, that we're not real fans, that we're not, we're almost not really there at games and stuff like that. But I think you've seen from Clippers playoff environments and things in the past that the Clippers, do have a really vocal fan base. They do have a fan base who can make a difference to this team on the court as well. And I think being able to have our own arena to do this, having basically all the tools now. There's no excuse anymore. There's no hiding place for Clippers fans. So you've mentioned us being, one of the most deserving fan bases, and that's a sort of interesting way of looking at it, because I think now, like, it's almost on us. Like, Steve Ballmer's given us all the keys to show that we do deserve this. So it's on us now to prove that we do, to go out and make, as I say, as I said before, make it a really difficult place for away teams or road teams, I should say, to come to, and really build that atmosphere up. And then listen, you mentioned about impacting the team on the court as well. We are going into this with not a lot of expectations, but if we as a crowd can make a difference, then there's enough of those home games, famously 41 of them, for the Clippers to be able to get themselves in, at least into a playoff spot. And then come the playoffs, if the atmosphere is still raucous and the Clippers can build off that, who knows how far this could go. So no expectations for the team, lots of expectations for Intuit Dome, what that's going to be like, and hopes that both of them can be great this season.
Absolutely. So this week the schedule was released, and we found out who we're going to be facing in the first game: Phoenix Suns, which would be great because we've got a bit of a history with the Suns, and I think that to open Intuit Dome would be quite special. They then head on the road to Denver. We've got a back-to-back with the Nuggets and the Warriors, and then a back for 5 games. So I think it's Trailblazers, Suns, Thunder, Spurs, and the return of Paul George in Philadelphia. I think one thing that was quite interesting from the schedule release, and I think it was something that maybe the Clippers were hoping to reduce with taking control of their schedule, having their own place, was that they'd have significantly less back-to-backs. But it appears that is not the case, and 16 back-to-backs, which I think is a NBA record as far as I'm aware, is going to be quite tough. They've gone without afternoon games for this season, which I think those who are listening, who are based in the UK and Europe, would be a little disappointed about. I think a lot of us perhaps got into following the Clippers through some of the afternoon games that they were forced to have as a result of sharing crypto arena with the Lakers. So it's going to be a lot of late nights for us in over in the UK and Europe. But the 16 back-to-backs is not going to help at all. What have you made of the schedule, and how do you think the Clippers are going to fare with those games?
Yeah, as I say, like, the schedule's not really been something that I've engaged with too much in recent years, besides sort of like using it to plan trips to LA. And like, as I say, I'm very excited that I'm going to be able to go out in November and get to 4 of those games. And even things like we were just talking then, and I'd not even looked at the teams who the Clippers were playing against. I was more just looking at like the bank of games as a whole. So being able to get out there and see Steph Curry live in the Warriors game, things like that, is going to be a genuinely incredible experience. But I feel like I just did engage with the schedule release that bit more this year. And particularly, I think the way it's drip fed to fans is simultaneously frustrating, but I understand it because it kept me wanting more. It kept me wanting more. Like when you see, when we're playing the 76ers, and when that first game against the Lakers is, and the opening night, as you say, being against the Phoenix Suns and stuff, it was really keeping us on tenterhooks, almost like one of those series that they release episode by episode, and you have to wait the next week for the next one. It did really have that feeling around the phased release. But the back-to-back things is a sort of a strange one in a sense, because I think we all thought that was going to be something that would be eliminated by us no longer having to worry about sharing the arena with somebody else. But it looks like it's just a thing that the NBA have incorporated more of this season, which is why the Clippers have been one of the teams who've been sort of stuck with it, because there's a number of other teams who've got 16 back-to-backs for the season as well. So it's a franchise high for the Clippers, I presume, like you say. maybe a league high on the whole in terms of what's gone before, but there are a couple of other teams who have just as many back-to-backs this season, so we sort of can't look at it and get too downhearted about it. I think from what I've seen, things from journalists in recent days, it's been more about getting rid of those midday tip-offs, because even though we it benefits us as UK fans, we get to watch the Clippers at sort of more like 8:30 in the evening, our time for those 12:30 tips. It clearly wasn't a thing that benefited the Clippers. It wasn't to say that their record was terrible in those games. I think they probably went just about 500 in their record in those games last season. But I think in all those games, I'm sure there was a tweet from Lon Word said they were down by double digits in every single one of those games. So the Clippers, relentlessly slow starts in those games. So if they can turn a couple more of those into just more, I guess, processional kind of wins, easier wins. I mentioned about getting guys like Jordan Miller and stuff some garbage time minutes late once the season starts. Maybe that's going to be one of the benefits, and maybe then those back-to-backs won't hurt quite as much. But it's just interesting from the NBA standpoint, really, because I think we're in an era of sport where we as fans are starting to understand like player care much more. Like obviously sports science has improved across all sports and things like that. We're seeing so many arguments again, sort of on the English side of things here in the football and the Premier League space in particular, where managers are coming out week after week now complaining about schedules and things like that. And for the NBA to effectively once again condense the schedule in terms of having more of those back-to-back games and sort of not showing too much of a care for player welfare around that is a bold move, I think, from Adam Silver. Feels like once again one of those things where the players and the Players Association have just not come out of this latest CBA with a particularly good deal for themselves. It feels like once again you're going into a season where you are going to have coaches coming out and complaining about those sort of schedule hiccups and things. So not looking forward to any of that discourse, not necessarily looking forward to the Clippers having, records amounts of back-to-backs, but hopefully the lack of the 12:30 tips, the sacrifice we make as UK fans will benefit the team.
Absolutely. Like I said, that's something that us UK EU fans are going to miss, but I did get to experience what it's like over in America to have those games. I went over to cover the Clippers when they famously had that, 2 games in 22, 23 hours. That was just absolutely outrageous. And having to travel from the UK with the jet lag to then go and watch a midday game twice in a row was a challenge. So I don't know, maybe the league have looked at that scenario and thought, we can't do that to them again, or anyone in general. It's as you said, player welfare has to be taken into a lot more regard, and I think there's been some times this season where the league could have looked after some of the players a bit better, and perhaps are starting to prioritize that revenue a lot more. The more games you have, more interesting games you have, with introduction of the NBA Cup to make the regular season more interesting, the better the product. But I think if you're missing a majority of your star players, then that is your product losing quality, because you're prioritizing the volume of games. So I don't know. I think maybe just my opinion, but I'd like to see in the future maybe a reduction in the amount of games, just to try and get rid of some of these back-to-backs. I don't think it would just add to the quality more. There are some arenas in the league that really, still struggle for attendance, and it is some of those back-to-back games that are part of that. So if they can get that sorted, they'll see players who aren't taking that load management anymore, which has been a problem for the league, and they've implemented those fines. But I think that they're starting to go down a road which could backstab them a little bit. I don't know what will happen in this next season, but this record number of back-to-backs across a number of different teams, you're going to want to see players who aren't going to be wanting to sit out games because they'll be worried about fines, but they've really got to be putting their health first. So I think they might get to a murky spot with some of the protocols and stuff. And obviously Kawhi Leonard, who's just coming back from injury, was told that he shouldn't really be playing for the USA team. He's not going to look at that schedule, you know, very fondly. So I'm hoping that he can ease into things as well. And like I said, it could be a good opportunity for guys like Jordan Miller, where we may have to rest players here and there. But it's just going to continue to add to that narrative that there are guys out there who just want to low manage and don't want to play. It's not like the 90s, Michael Jordan wasn't doing this, but, the games wasn't that as intense, the schedule wasn't as intense, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes from a schedule standpoint. And like I said, getting that experience of those afternoon games, I can definitely see why the Clippers were desperate to get rid of those, because they are really tough and they're tough for the players. I can't imagine much of them like playing in the morning. And I know, like you mentioned over here in Premier League, it is a topic of issue that always comes up with just the crazy schedule that teams have to go through. Players have constantly said that they hate playing those games. So will be interesting to see how that plays out this season. But some guys who may not feature very much this year is Bones Hyland and PJ Tucker, with the Clippers signing Chris Dunn and Bones not getting a lot of minutes last season. There has been some questions raised around him. There's also been a lot of rumors over the off season around whether Bones will be a Clipper this season, PJ Tucker included. But focusing on Bones for a second, I thought that there were moments last season he looked like he was really developing as a player, but it does appear that Ty doesn't trust him as much. I think it was one of the games that I covered when I was out in LA, where Bones had a great game. He was playing a lot through the first three quarters, but Ty ended up putting him in the fourth. He was asked a question by the reporter after the game, and it appeared that he just doesn't have that level of trust with him. And I think at his stage in his career, it could be a good opportunity for him to maybe find a team that is more interested in developing him as a player rather than trying to chase wins now. So what's your take on Bones and his future with the Clippers this season?
Yes, it's one that comes with a lot of sadness for me, really, because Bones is basically like probably my favorite prototype of NBA player. Like I'm a guy who grew up on Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson is my favorite non-Clipper of all time, because he had that real sort of street baller vibe about him, and Bones brings that to the modern NBA. There's probably not a lot of guys around the league now that you'd say do sort of embody that street baller thing as much as Bones does. So it is a shame really that he's not been able to sort of find a rhythm with the Clippers. And you mentioned Ty's lack of trust in him. I think like whenever we watch it as fans, we're always watching it through a different perspective to the way the coaches are watching it. So, we'll see guys like Bones making a bit of a leap in terms of defensive energy, because I think that was the thing on the Nuggets that he probably never showed enough of, really, was that sort of, almost will to defend whenever teams were getting into half-court offense and stuff. It was clear he was just a weak spot in that second unit on Denver's team, and that was why he was eventually sort of, bombed out of the rotation there. But with the Clippers, I think he did show a noticeable jump in that energy, but the energy is not enough in and of itself, for a guy like Ty, especially, who, is a coach who's so into the X's and O's and so into, defensive schemes, especially. And I think that's what you're going to see so much of this season, and maybe why Bones won't fit and a guy like Chris Dunn will fit that bit more is just what it looks like for the overall scheme. So even though at times we'll see Bones, making big plays defensively and showing a lot of energy and will to defend on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's important, what you're doing around your teammates, how perceptive you're being, and how much you're being a part of that defensive scheme, as I say, and that's where I think Bones does leave a lot to be desired, because on the offensive side of the ball, there's not a lot to be desired. Bones is a certified bucket getter. He's a guy who can get his own from inside, who can shoot the lights out from three once he gets hot. The playmaking chops, I think, could follow, although I'm sort of wary that we've said that about a lot of guys throughout their Clippers careers, Luke Kennard being the one who I can think of most recently, who we were hoping we would see at times sort of, crowbarred into rotation in point guard and things like that, because we weren't necessarily always wedded to the idea of going out and getting that more natural point guard at the expense of guys we already had on the roster. So it didn't work for Luke. Those playmaking chops never really came. I don't know if they're going to come for Bones either. They probably won't on the Clippers, as you say, because it looks likely that he probably ends up on another team now. So I'd like to believe there's a way back for Bones. I'd like to believe there's something he can do to get his way into Ty's plans. But I'm worried that it will ultimately come down to the skill set of the player just not matching up to, what the coach wants and what the coach is looking for from his team, and as I say, just fit on this roster. In general, I think Bones is maybe just not there, which, as I say, saddens me to say, because he is definitely one of those players who, he's one of those guys who's worth the admission fee alone. We're talking about the new arena and ticket price and stuff there. Bones is a guy that gets bums in seats because he's an exciting basketball player to watch. So
Yeah.
sad that I maybe will not get the chance to see Bones Hyland pull on a Clippers jersey again, but maybe I'll just keep maintaining that little bit of hope that there is a place for him on the roster for now, so I don't get too sad about it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think when Bones came in, I was really excited at what he could offer. There was a little bit of a fallout, I think, with the Denver Nuggets that um, made him available to get the Clippers, and they didn't have to give up a lot to get him. But we've seen, like I said, flashes of development. But yeah, with the direction the Clippers are going this season, that more defensive mindset, intensity, I think that's something that he has perhaps lacked. He's a great scorer, like I said, gets bums on seats. I think his playmaking has taken a jump, but there was noise around him and PJ Tucker perhaps having a little bit of a attitude problem earlier in the season, which resulted in them spending some time away. And like I've mentioned, that's obviously not something that's new for Bones, having gone through something similar in Denver. So I wonder where the team stance with him is now that it doesn't appear like there's going to be lots of minutes available for him. With new guys coming through that are going to be really eager to take some of those minutes that he could be getting and prove himself at this level. For someone like Bones, I do think he's in a dangerous position. And like I said, someone else who's perhaps a bit unsure of his position on the Clippers is PJ Tucker, and it does appear like he would be very much open to moving away from the team. There was a report by Sam Amico from Hoopswire, I think last week, that sort of said the Clippers are expected to keep PJ Tucker into training camp. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of movement there. He's someone that has come in to the Clippers on occasion and has been fairly underwhelming. He's a player that's moving towards the end of his career. He's earning a significant amount, so he's eating up a lot of the Clippers' salary cap this season. And I know the Clippers would love to move off of that contract. I don't think he really offers much more that guys like Nico Batum that they've just brought in for that fourth position already offer. So yeah, interested to see what they do with PJ this year, whether it's another chance for him to come back in the league and have like a final farewell, or maybe they'll agree to part ways. I think there's something they can do with his contract in terms of stretching it across the season and parting ways. But yeah, it does seem like he will still be on the Clippers coming to training camp. What do you think his future lies this season?
Yeah, I don't think it makes much sense for the Clippers to stretch the contract. I've seen that being, sort of touted in places, and I think that's just, people basically just being in a rush to get off that PJ contract. I don't think that's the wise thing for the Clippers to do, though. To be honest, I've been pretty pleased with the way the Clippers have handled the whole PJ Tucker situation. I liked that, even to the point where he was getting minutes last season, I liked they were sort of, almost trying to find a way to make him part of the rotation, and ultimately didn't earn his place completely when he did have those minutes. So he was back out again by the time the playoffs came around. But yeah, I'm pleased with the way the Clippers have handled everything so far from the sort of business perspective, because I think that's the way I'd have probably made all the moves in terms of the financials of things. I think that the wisest move now, I mean, for PJ, like you say, it's one last bag for him, so I can understand him sort of not wanting to make the move that undersells himself by any stretch of the imagination, and not buy himself out of his contract or any of those kinds of things. I completely understand that, or decline any options. I should say, rather than sort of buying himself out of his contract, yeah, declining any options to go and get a move on a team elsewhere, because he's a 38, 39-year-old guy, clearly coming towards the end of his NBA career. He wants to make sure that he secures every single last cent next to the dollar on that $11 million that he is soaking up on the Clippers payroll this season. So I think he'll be one of those who probably gets flipped to the deadline. He's a bit of a victim, I think, of there being a lot of teams in the NBA who think they are not far off from contention this season. I think you're even seeing it with teams like the Chicago Bulls, like how quiet the Bulls have been over the summer when you think they should be, at least, blowing things up by now with the way that roster and that core has just not worked, and particularly with DeMar DeRozan walking to Sacramento this summer as well. But yet the Bulls still don't blow it up because I think they are a team who see themselves as being within touch and distance of contention, which is absolutely mental to even try and consider. But it's clear that they as an organization have that sort of that perspective and those delusions of grandeur around that. So I think PJ is a bit of a victim of that. Maybe that picture will change a little bit come the trade deadline, and maybe that's when the Clippers can find a way to flip him. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him getting some bottom of the bench rotational minutes for the Clippers this season, just so they can keep that value high. Because basically the Clippers don't want to give up assets to get rid of the contracts. That's the thing. Like you mentioned, they do want to get off the contract clear. They do. That's been all the noises that's been there since PJ arrived on the team, to be honest. But the Clippers just don't want to give up assets, valuable assets to them at this stage, valuable assets off the back of them, getting rid of every last asset they had in that Paul George trade, the one that brought him to LA, I should say, rather than the one that's seen him going out of LA. So yeah. PJ, I can see getting a couple of minutes this season. I can see it being flipped to the deadline, and I can see that working best for all parties, because I think he's been playing a bit of chicken around his contract with the Clippers, and the Clippers haven't budged, and I'm pleased about that.
Yeah, I think one person that will be really happy to see the back of PJ Tucker will be the Clippers kit man, because the amount of shoes that man has, it seems like an absolute mission to manage. I saw a video of him the other day with just a boot full of shoes, and it's really impressive, but it must be an absolute nightmare for the kit man, the Clippers, to have to manage that. So yeah, we'll see what happens with PJ Tucker this season, whether he sticks around. But I think that's it for episode 2 of the View from the Clipper podcast. Thank you so much, Josh, for your time. Really enjoyed this one. We'll be back soon. I said that there's around 2 months until the season starts, so we'll make sure to jump on again, cover any of the latest news, and maybe answer a few of the questions from the Clippers community. Make sure to drop us a review if you've enjoyed. 5 stars is always appreciated on your platform of choice. You can follow me over on ClippersUK. Josh, remind the world where they can find you and follow your work.
Yes, I'm one of those annoying creators, unfortunately, who has different handles for different platforms. So I'm J Sexton 24 on Twitter, Josh C Sexton on Instagram, and yeah, make sure you follow me. Make sure you're following James on his socials, and Clippers UK as well, because there's going to be a lot more to come from both of us, and particularly some Clippers based content when I get out there in November, which I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah, I think we're all excited to see that as well, and I'm going to be very jealous sitting at home back in the UK watching that stuff. So yeah, thanks all for tuning in, and go Clippers go.